Okay, welcome back. We're on page 505 talking about the issue log and how I have a particular preference to, Bugzilla as a tracking mechanism for keeping track of all these things. It's a pretty good example. So, to be clear, we're not actually managing stakeholders, we're managing their expectation and their engagement. Let me just give you a very simple example. You don't just invite the sponsor to the meeting. The kickoff meeting. Hey, Mr. Sponsor, thank you for being our sponsor. We're having a meeting next Tuesday. Okay, that's not what you do. You're trying to manage their engagement. So what you're doing is, I've prepared some thoughts that you can use if you would please have an opening remark. And so you're prompting them to come to the meeting with the expectation they're going to give a rousing speech. Excuse me. So that's managing their engagement. In the thing of Bugzilla, everyone who sends me a recommendation is going to get a thank you back, and they're going to find out when the thing got fixed or whether or not it didn't get fixed. I mean, they're not going to be left hanging. They're not going, I made a suggestion, but no one ever got back to me, so I don't have a clue, right? So making these engagements work, a little bit of work to it. On page 505, they talk about, some best practices. Okay, and a lot of this has to do with communication, which we've already talked about, but let's just go through it in the list. So first one is, be clear from the start. It's more difficult if you start with, you don't know what the heck you're talking about, and then later you have to come back and say, well, what I really meant was, just go ahead and be clear at the beginning. You don't want anyone to get confused on what it is the project is supposed to do, for example. If your stakeholders are confused, I don't even know. Oh, this thing is going to be doing accounting too? I didn't know. Oh, man. So you be clear up front. Explain the consequences of a decision. So if somebody comes in, no, I think you need to do this, you go, I understand, thank you. But hear me out. If we went this way, we're going to have to add, 5 months onto the schedule and $250,000 because we're going to have to do this. Explain the consequences. Don't just say, well, that's a dumb idea. Okay. I tell the story and about we're working on this project, and the boss came in one day and says, I think we need high availability. We need 5 nines availability on this project. And everyone in the room went, and I said, I kind of kept my cool, and I went, well, that's a great idea. Unfortunately, that's going to about double the budget. So if you have an extra $150,000, we'll be glad to take that on, because you're right, it'll make it a heck of a lot more robust. And the guy went, double the budget? Well, that's not what I wanted. And I said, oh, well, okay. But the point is, explain to them the consequences. Because otherwise they're going to say, well, I want this, and I want voice recognition. Well, okay, but that's going to put us back 2 months and it's going to cost us this. Oh, okay, well, in that case, I don't want it. Managing their expectations. Okay, have a contingency plan, because not everything's going to work the way you expect, right? No surprises. That's really the key to this. The worst thing in the world you can have with a project is someone think it's going to be done in June, okay? It's going to be done June 14th. And so, we're building a new building on campus. And the contract says it's going to be done on June 14th. And so I've got moving companies lined up to start on June 15th to come get my furniture and move it into the new building, because that's what you told me. And then you forgot to tell me, or I was in the loop because no one knew that I was a stakeholder. I'm a stakeholder because I'm the one who's managing the movement of the furniture. You didn't know that, so you didn't have that. But the contract got slipped by 3 weeks. And so the building is not ready. No one told me. And so I've got these moving companies lined up to move, and they can't move. All right? Cool. No surprises. All right. That's the key to this thing. And the last one to talk about is take a stand. When somebody says something dumb, don't just say, okay, we'll put that on the list, and we'll, go ahead and say, no. I need you to compress your schedule to have it done, before the stockholders meeting. No. That is just, no. I'm sorry, we can't do that. That's just unrealistic. Okay, on page 506 is the controlling of the stakeholders. That makes about as much sense as managing stakeholders, controlling them. So again, we're talking about controlling the stakeholders' engagements. And the example I gave was, don't just invite the sponsor to the meeting, but give them some prepared remarks they can use as part of a rousing speech. In other words, force them to engage if they're not already there. Don't just invite them to a meeting. That's not getting them to engage. That's if you want them to be present at the meeting, just invite them. If you want them to be engaged at the meeting, you're going to have to do something more. You're going to have to go talk to them. You're going to have to do something. Just some message that pops up on the admin assistant's calendar says, "Okay, Bob, you got a meeting in 10 minutes." That ain't the same thing as controlling stakeholders. All right, the last section on page 508, they talk about the use of software. Okay. So, email, those kind of things, that's pretty straightforward. Shared calendars is perfect for these kind of things. But then we have all the group and collaboration stuff. Putting things out on Google Docs allows an entire organization to see what's going on. So, for example, I'm the person who's in charge of, having the furniture moved from one building to another, and I have access to the Google Docs. I have access to all the information I need about, okay, this schedule slipped, and it looks like we're not going to be ready for occupancy until the last of the month rather than the middle of the month, that kind of stuff. I've got it all. So Google Docs. The SharePoint services, if you're a Microsoft fan, same thing. Social media. And when I first read this in the book, I went, social media? For managing stakeholders? No, that's not what they meant. What they meant is use social media to find, the other people who have similar things so you can ask them questions. Sort of like what's called the birds of a feather. In other words, there's a social media group on, cost estimators. And so all the cost estimators get there and they swap stories about, good things and bad things. And so you could go on one of those social media sites and say, look, I've got this problem with, this one stakeholder who's making these outrageous demands for cost. And how do you guys handle that problem? Okay, see what I'm after? Cool. The ticket tracking software, if you have like a help desk, there's an awful lot of products out there. One of them is called Open Ticket. There's a gazillion of them out there. Bugzilla, of course, the one that I would probably go with. I'd use Bugzilla for everything if I had an opportunity. There's a little database behind the scenes. It's pretty simple. Anyway, the idea is all these things, the ticket tracking thing and the issue tracking and all this engagement stuff. If you had like a Facebook page that says, here's the current status. Okay, for example, at the university, and let's say we're building yet another building, you could have an entire Facebook page on the new building. Okay? And so they would take photographs, cool aerial photographs and little movies of what's going on in construction and where we are in the process, and maybe a little Gantt chart showing, here's where we are and here's some things that have slipped. Wouldn't that be kind of cool to have an entire Facebook page on construction? I'll tell you one that we did. When we worked on this big construction project, and we went to there was a utility pole right next to our construction site. So we went and put a webcam up on the utility pole, pointing it down to the construction site, and you could go to this web page and get live web feed of the construction project. Isn't that engagement? Isn't that mean anyone can go see what's going on at any time? Man, that's definitely outreach and engagement. Cool. All right, we have reached the end of the chapter and the end of the book. The next time you see my smiling face is going to be when we talk about the review for the final exam. So until then,